So Vidya, I thought I'll start with you. Your journey yourself as a in the corporate world. When Edelweiss was started, you were quite involved in building that from scratch. So tell us a little bit of how did that journey lead into actually starting Edelgive?
I was part of a group of 10 people. I was the 10th employee of Edelweiss, and it was very interesting because we were a very small company. We were very entrepreneurial. We continue to be so. I think over the 7 years until 2007 when we IPO'd, I really saw Edelweiss grow and bloom, but also go through the journeys and the troubles that come with building an organization and growing businesses. It's never easy. Finding the right people, finding the financial resources, all of that is a very interesting journey. And I felt a lot of what we'd gone through could be translated, that entrepreneurial journey and the journey of building an organization could also be translated into our work with nonprofits. As part of my role as a CFO, I was also looking at making our philanthropic allocations. But one of the first things that struck me is that more than the money, it is the capacity building support that organizations need, and that's really in short supply, particularly when it comes to the non-profit sector. A lot of the organizations I visited were obviously excellent grassroots organizations, great work, high levels of integrity, great connect with the community, but issues of HR, issues of systems and processes, issues of financial planning was something that was impeding growth and scale, and I felt that bringing that knowledge that we learned in Edelweiss would be of considerable benefit to the work that we did in the foundation.
So, there are many kinds of nonprofits, right? There are large ones that need to get even larger, medium-sized ones that need to get large. But there is a certain philosophy you have about the kinds of organizations you want to work with. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I think, when we started, we thought that we'd work with young and very small organizations because we felt that that's where really there was complete absence of any support. I think the large organizations, which I define as organizations in excess of about 8 or 10 crores of annual budgets, those were the ones that got a lot of attention both from the funding world as well as from the capacity building world. The very young organizations had a few mentors like, you had Unlimited and Ashoka and organizations like that could mentor, entrepreneurs to make that first step into social entrepreneurship. But the middle section, which was, kind of the 25 to 50 lakhs through to the 2 crore annual budget kind of organizations, where I felt the most neglected, and those were the organizations that had the capacity to scale quickly if they got the right input at the right time. And so we've always focused. We do have very young first-time entrepreneurs also in our portfolio, but a lot of them are really organizations that need that, and also a very interesting life cycle where what you need initially is very different from what you need once you're crossing the 2 crore, 3 crore boundary. And so that's a very interesting sort of spectrum to be in, and our ability to work with all of these organizations is very high.
And one of the things you also talked about earlier is collaboration. Important to collaborate with others. So you talked about the collaboration with Toolbox. So Vijaya, tell us a little bit about what is the philosophy of Toolbox and how you both started working together.
And Toolbox was started originally in Belgium. Founders felt that there was a lot more that one could do beyond venture philanthropy, and said that if they could, in their own personal capacities, go beyond, cutting checks to actually use their skills which they had acquired during their stints in various corporate organizations and deploy it with the non-profit, maybe they could really help these non-profits get a better leverage, not only from the deployment of those skills, but also in the deployment of their own funds which they had received from other grant makers. And with that same philosophy was brought to India a couple of years back, and that's how the Toolbox story in India began. I happened to meet Vidya at an event. When I heard her speak, I felt that there were a lot of similarities. There were a lot of synergies which both Edelgive and Toolbox could really explore. And it was a win-win for everybody. I mean, the investees, the non-profits, Edelgive Foundation and Toolbox. It became a very a symbiotic kind of relationship. And for me, it just seemed like the two semicircles that made that circle fit. And also, I think the ethos, the understanding of what Toolbox does, because Toolbox does not work directly with the community. We don't have a community engage. We work with the non-profits, and we felt that synergy, that understanding was spot on.
I think a lot of times, what you're talking about is in the toolbox, you actually help people articulate who they are, their vision statement, what they want to be, what their business plan is, etc. Because funding is not the only thing that people need. They need a lot of these things also. And we actually have a couple of slides from one of the organizations that you work with. And I think, in a for-profit company, we come up with our mission, etc. And then we go develop ads, we develop communication packages. But a lot of the nonprofits don't have that ability, because whoever gives the money says, I want my entire money to go to the beneficiary. They don't have the privilege of, developing their mission statement or their messages. And I thought we should just show a couple of slides of one of the organizations that you worked with. So tell us a little bit about what the organization is, and then...
This was work which we did for Apnalaya in Bombay. Apnalaya has been there, I think, for more than 40 years. So Apnalaya originally was started by the Australian High Commissioner in the almost early 70s, where, he saw a lot of these slum children in on the roads and not at school, and was wondering why they weren't in school, and that's how the whole genesis of Apnalaya began. They basically, sponsor some of the education programs.
Day orphanage. Right?
Sort of. I mean, they have health interventions. They have the Balwadi program, essentially to cater to the children who were belonging into the neighboring slums in South Bombay. Over a period of time, with the freeing up of the Land Sealing Act and so on, and a lot of redevelopment, some of these slums moved away from these regions to the outer regions, and today Apnalaya works essentially at Govandi, which is on the fringes of the dumping ground and one of the most neglected communities. And I think the whole philosophy at Apnalaya has really been to kind of make sure that these people are not just forgotten, because they are, and since they're forgotten, if there was a way for them to step in. And so they basically have the infant health program, they have the Balwadis, they have an education sponsorship program, they have a feeding program, and they also have something called as the Women's Citizenship Program, I think, where women from the community, some of their basic rights are taken away, and so they've been helping them. When Apnalaya came to us, essentially, they were like, we're completing 40 years. We've been doing what we do. Is there a way we can do this better? We can showcase what we do better. And that's when Toolbox stepped in, and we said that, okay, we know what you do, which is phenomenal, but how do we present it in a language which the rest of the world understands? And so that's when we said that, okay, let's work on positioning and branding.
So it's interesting. So first two slides you will see are about what the organization is about. It's about feeding Amrit, it's about teaching Raghu, and it's about liberating Lakshmi. This is what the organization is about. It's really interesting to me is to work themselves out of a job. And really, if you look at all of us in this room, our goal really is to work ourselves out of a job. So that's the tone they took to develop their ad campaign to do this. And these are some of the ads that were developed. And you can see how you can get some creative minds to come together with a nonprofit which is doing really good work. You can develop the kind of campaign that attracts everybody's attention. And why not do to a nonprofit the same thing we do for a for-profit, which is world-class, representation out in the world. And I think that's what...
Yeah, I mean, we're extremely proud of the fact that, all our volunteers do this pro bono, essentially, and I think that is the crux of what Toolbox is all about, that you're finding those people who have the intent, who have the skills and willing to do this. There's that consistent commitment which I say is an essential requirement at Toolbox. Consistent commitment to want to do this. And I think there's enough and more people out there. We just need to find them.
And also, I think a lot of times when people volunteer their time, they want to be very specific and say, I have this much time, I can do these things, just tell me what to do. They don't have the time to go find the right things. So I think from that point of view, what Toolbox offers is very valuable, because I can just say, hey, I'm very creative, I can give 20 hours of my time and this is what I can do, and you do all the work to match it with something good. So Vidya, one last question to you is, we talked about funding, talked about collaborations. There's a third piece of it, which is the resources that come from Edelweiss itself. So can you tell us a little bit about the third piece of this work?
I think one of the unique things about Edelgive is that the entire Edelgive team is essentially funded entirely by Edelweiss. In addition, 60% of our annual contributions also come from Edelweiss, the rest come from our funding partners. But I think the bigger contribution of Edelweiss is really in terms of the employee engagement programs that we run. So I think we struggled with it. It's not very easy in a large corporate, particularly with employees who are very highly skilled but also have a lot on their plate. But I think we found our way by figuring that different people need different things to feel engaged. There's no one size. And we started tailoring that. The other thing that became of great interest is field visits, because nothing really inspires people than sort of looking at the work on the ground. So we do that. We do 6 to 8 field visits a year, and I think that has been for us the greatest engagement with Edelweiss. The value has really been there.
Also, I think in general, now there is the CSR rules coming and all that stuff. It's very easy to think of it as another line item, but really, if you can embrace it, it provides, I think, an amazing service to the employees also, because once you get to be bigger and more successful, you kind of lose sight of what is this journey all about, And so once in a while to stop and say, okay, all this success that we have is actually helping someone out there.
Absolutely.
Makes them even more dedicated to what they're doing.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the value of it. So we just wanted to cover the 3 legs of what you're doing. So you've done, can you give us some numbers of how many organizations you supported so far?
About 25. We'll close the year at 25. What we try and do every year is sort of, at the beginning of the year, really look at the portfolio, and we identify organizations very selectively. A lot of it is around the value that the portfolio provides.
Yeah. And I think, how do you, this is the $1 million question people want to know, right? You look at a lot of organizations. At the end of the day, in the due diligence, what is it that ultimately makes you choose?
I think it's the management team. It's the team that is running the organization. Every one of the people that you will meet out of our investees are all great, but they've also managed to put together a group of individuals around them that are equally passionate and equally committed, and are willing to kind of lay down their lives for what they're doing. I think that is so strikingly obvious when you go and see the work. So that for us is very key.
So I want to ask each of you the parting question of what would you like the future of Toolbox? We have a great collaboration, you're working together, but what would you like to see Toolbox become?
I think one is, of course, if there's a non-profit in a city which needs us, we are there. And I think we just need to find that talent and just continue to work and along the way build the non-profit so that a day comes when they really don't actually need Toolbox. That should be the ultimate vision, that along the way non-profits get even more smarter than what they're already doing, and we're just part of them completely.
How about you, Vidya? What would you like?
I think for us, if we can be a hub or a network or a place where we can attract people who come with, like I said, very different strengths and skills, And we managed to bring all these people together and obviously bring that whole ecosystem up, bring this whole development marketplace in a sense. We can elevate it to a much higher level of knowledge transfer and funds that can then, sort of work around all these organizations. That is really our dream, to be that catalyst.
And I think it's great to have all of you here, because at the end of the day, the purpose is that how can we each be that spokes in the wheel, because none of us alone can do this. But if each of us can get the inspiration from each other and have a collaboration that can go beyond anything we can think of, I think we have a great future ahead. So thank you very much.